So today what we're going to go over is how to use PSpice to simulate circuits. So what I have pulled up right here is a document that's available to you in the supplemental material on Canvas. And most of the stuff I'm going to go over today, if not all of it, is contained in this document. So I do recommend you review that or even go through it as you're watching this video. We can see some of the stuff we're going to go through. First is creating a circuit. We're going to go through all these steps. We're also going to go through creating and running a simulation, and some of these other items are for some later stuff that we're going to deal with. But then the latter half of the document, we see we have some plotting tips and tricks. We have some keyboard shortcuts, which I'm going to go over some of the good ones in the video here. Plotting shortcuts, commonly used parts for libraries, so I'll mention that as well. And we also down here at the very bottom have our scale factors for PSpice. So for instance, if we want to put in a kilo ohm resistor, we know we can put a K, whereas if we want mega ohm, we have to use MEG because M already stands for milli. So again, that's available to you on Canvas. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to open up our program called CIS Capture. So of course you can have a desktop icon, or if you've just installed it, you can come to your start menu here or wherever it is that you installed it. For me, I have this Cadence release 17.2 2016. It should look similar even if you have a newer version. So we're going to expand that, and not too far down we should see Capture CIS. So we're going to want to open that. So it's going to take a while to open. So while that's getting up and going, I should mention that you do need to be on campus connected to Milligan servers, or you can be VPNing in virtual private network so that you're connected to the servers, because our PSpice license are contained on the servers. Okay, so now we get this start page. So what we want to do is we're going to want to create a new project. And so that's important to note, because if you select new design, it'll let you do most things, but it won't let you simulate. So if you run into that issue, what you want to do is create new project. So what we're going to call this, we can call this demo 1. And we're going to leave this selected as PSpice analog or mixed analog digital. And we can choose where we want to save it. So you can see I've got it in a folder for PSpice demos. So let me just go ahead and pull that up here so we can see there's nothing in there right now. So desktop, PSpice demos. So nothing in here right now. And the reason I'm showing you that is I want to show you all the different types of files that populate in there. So typically for this class, we can just create a blank project, but we do have the option to create a project based on something we've already done. So we click that, and it's going to sort of build our workspace here. Okay, so while it's doing that, let me come back over here and show you all these files that it's populated. So if you want to close the circuit and close PSpice and open it up again later, the file that you're going to want to click on is this OPJ type file. These other files are of course necessary for everything to work properly, so don't delete them, but this is the one that you would click on to open it again. Or if you open that Capture CIS program, you see there was a place where you could select recently worked on projects. Okay, so we get something that looks like this, so sort of a grid where we can build our circuit, and we've got a lot going on both up here in the ribbon and on this toolbar along the side. So let's say we want to simulate a circuit that we had from our notes just to make sure that all of our calculations were correct. Well, so how do we do that? So the first thing we're going to want to do is add in our components. So let's say we want to look at that bridge circuit that we analyzed. So if we want to add parts, we come over here to this right toolbar and we see this is place part, and we have keyboard shortcut P. So if we click on that, it's going to expand a window here. And notice I have a lot of parts available to me here, and that's only because I have all of these different libraries selected. So if I just select one, notice that I'll have fewer parts. If I have selected all of them, so if I hold Shift and select several of them, I'm going to have more parts up here. At any point, if you know what part you're looking for, you can just type it in here. Maybe I want a DC source. I know we're going to need that for a circuit, so I can put VDC, and that comes up here, and it tells me that it's in our source library. When you first open PSpice, however, for the very first time, you might not have any libraries here, and so that's normal. What you're going to need to do then is add libraries. So this is detailed in that PSpice basics document. That's going to open this window here, and so I'm just going to open this so you can see this directory. This is how it typically is. It might be slightly different depending on how you installed it. But again, this directory here is indicated in that PSpice basics. So what you would do is you would navigate there, you would select the appropriate .olb file and select to open that, and that's going to add the library to your sort of queue here. So I know that this VDC is in the source library, so I can click on our source library, and let's say I hadn't typed that in, so it's not going to select anything. So maybe I'm looking for it, so I can click on things, and it's going to give me a little preview down here of what's going on. And it's arranged alphabetical, so VDC is going to be towards the bottom. So here's the VDC, looks pretty much like a battery, so that looks good. So I can either hit enter or double click VDC, and that's going to put my cursor to the left side of the screen, and this little battery is now following my cursor around. So once I click, so I'm going to left click, and that's going to place the part. So notice as I continue to move my cursor around, I still have this little battery following me around. So if I click again, it's going to continue to place these batteries. So how do I get it to stop? Well, we can right click and we can click end mode, or the keyboard shortcut, as you can see here, is just escape. So now I'm just moving my cursor around like normal, no batteries. But now I have these couple extra batteries I need to get rid of, so I can select them. It's selected because we have this sort of pink purple dashed line around it, so we can right click and we can come down here to delete, where we can see our keyboard shortcut is just delete. So with this one, I'm just going to select it and hit delete on the keyboard, and that gets rid of it. Because also this is a little hard to see. Maybe if you have a bigger screen or you have a lot of room to work with, you might run into this issue. So a handy keyboard shortcut is to just click I, and that's going to zoom us in. We can also click O to zoom out. But in this case, we have a lot of space here, and we're doing a relatively small circuit, so we can go ahead and zoom in. So the other thing that we're going to need to place for that bridge circuit is our resistors. So resistors are going to be in our analog library. And so again, common components are, and what libraries they're in is another thing that's listed in that PSpice basics. So we have R, so I can double click that, and that's going to give me a resistor here. So for our bridge circuit, we want to have them rotated. So I'm going to rotate one resistor and put it here. I rotated it by hitting R on the keyboard. I can also right click and select rotate. Let me get out of there. So there's a second resistor, a third resistor, and let's put a fourth resistor here. And now we need a fifth resistor in the middle, so I'm going to hit R to rotate that, and I'm going to put that right there. So now I'm done placing resistors, so I'm going to hit escape to stop. And notice I put this R2 a little high, so I'm just going to select it, and I can move it down so it's nice and even with R1. Not that that's important, but sometimes it makes you feel a little better when everything lines up. So we can also move these labels around. Maybe I want this 1K to be up on the same side. So we have some freedom in terms of how to do that. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to assign values to these components. So for instance, if we want to change the value of this voltage source, so in our notes it was 50 volts, you see it's defaulted to 0, we can just click in here and change this value to 50. We don't need to have that VDC, we can just put 50 and it'll assume it's volts. We also have some options here as far as what's being displayed. Right here we're just displaying our value. We can also change what we call this source, so maybe we want to call it VS instead of V1, so you have the freedom to do that as well. So we can just leave that as V1 for now. Either way, so you can change that around to whatever you want. Notice that our resistors have just defaulted to R1, R2, R3, R4, and the values have defaulted to 1K, which indicates 1 kilo ohm. So to change this value again, we can just click on the 1K. And so this resistor was 12 ohms, so we can just type in 12. If there's no letters, it just assumes there's no metric prefix. So let's go ahead and hit enter or click on OK. If we want a more detailed look at all of the properties associated with the component, we can select it and then right click and do Edit Properties. And so that's going to pull up a big menu where we have a lot of different properties. And so notice it's put a new page up here too with our schematic, and this is our property editor. So we have a lot of things here that we're not normally going to deal with, but for our resistor, we see our value here is 1K. So for this particular resistor, it was 4 ohms, so I can just change that to 4. And so that's going to change that automatically as soon as I navigate away. So if I want to go back to my circuit, I can come to this page here that has this little diagram, and that's going to be my circuit. And so notice my value has been updated to 4. Since we're talking about these tabs, let me just quickly mention if you want to rename this or order things around, particularly as projects get more sort of complicated, we can click on this tab over here, and we can expand our demo1 file, look in our schematic one, and here's page 1. Let's say maybe we want to rename this to be bridge circuit. And so notice it gets updated over here. So we can mess around here with our files and our naming and stuff like that. Okay, so this circuit in the middle, let's go ahead and change this value to what it was in the notes, which was 10 ohms. Enter or select OK. This resistor down here was 6 ohms, and this bottom right resistor was 20 ohms. Okay, so what we want to do next is wire our circuit. And so we can wire our circuit by using this icon over here on the right toolbar, or we see the keyboard shortcut is just W. So I'm going to go ahead and click W, or click this icon, and we'll notice it switched from our arrow to our wiring. So now I have a little crosshair as opposed to an arrow as well. So I'm going to come over to one side of the component and left click. That's going to start my wire. I'm just dragging, not clicking, and I can connect it here by left clicking once more. So once I do that, it connects the wire, and notice I no longer have a wire following my cursor, but I still do have this crosshair indicating I'm still wiring. So I can left click and left click to connect these, and let's left click, connect there, and again I'm just left clicking each time to connect these, and so it'll just auto bend for me there, and I can just connect this right here, and that's going to connect. So let's say maybe for whatever reason, I'm just going to scroll down a hair here. For whatever reason, I don't want this wire to come straight over and up. Maybe I want to give myself a little more space and go down. So I can first come down with my wire, and then I can left click to set my bend point as being right there, and it won't auto adjust it. And then it's going to auto adjust as I come up here. So let's say I also want to connect this here. And so that would be our bridge circuit. And if I want to stop wiring, I can come back over here and click on our arrow again, or I can just hit escape, and that's going to take me out of wiring. So notice I've gone back to a mouse selector as opposed to that little crosshair. Okay, so here's our bridge circuit. It looks a little different than it did in the notes, but if we look closely, we see all the nodes make sense and they connect the same way. One other important thing that we always need to include in our PSpice simulations is a ground. So we don't always include this when we're doing our hand calculations, but we do need this for our PSpice simulations, otherwise you'll get some crazy results. So what we're going to do is come over here to our right toolbar and select Place Ground, or we can see it also has a keyboard shortcut of G, so I'm just going to click this. Depending on what libraries you have here, it's going to give you some different options. Really, they're all pretty much the same. We just want to select this 0. You should see a symbol that looks like this. Click OK. And in this case, our ground is here at the bottom. So I can put it anywhere along this bottom node. And I still have this ground following me around, so I'm going to hit escape to stop that. Scroll down a little bit here. Now we need to connect it to our circuit, so I'm going to hit W as a shortcut for wiring. And I'm going to just connect that to our circuit here, and then click escape to stop wiring. Okay, so now we've successfully wired our first simple circuit, and so in the next video we're going to see how we can simulate it at our DC level.